chapter of the California Native Plant Society. I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting here on ancestral lands of the Wiyot Tribe, who lived here from time immemorial, taking good care of it. And that's why we can be here today. So I'm Carol Ralph, currently president of the North Coast chapter. And there are a lot of our other good volunteers in this room. It takes a lot of people to make all the good things happen that our chapter does. And I'm not going to try to introduce them all because I always forget some, but you'll hear from some of them. And since there might be people here who haven't heard of the Native Plant Society, I'll just tell you that the California Native Plant Society is a membership nonprofit that brings together science, conservation, education, and horticulture to save native plants. So right now we're doing the education part, right? You're going to get educated. While I'm talking, we're going to pass around the yes, I would like list. Thank you. And so one of them will start here and one of them will start there. So it's a list on which you can sign up if you want to get email notification of our events, or help at the nursery, or help at the wildflower show, or have a consultant come to your house to help you think about what native plants would grow there. So have a look, see if you want to sign up for any of that. Okay, and for our Zoom audience, well, I'm not seeing the way this is set up. Welcome to our Zoom audience too. And I think Andrea is probably, well, is she going to screen? No, she's putting in the chat the yes, I would like list. So if you're on Zoom, be sure to look on the chat to see what these things are you could sign up to do or to get. Oh, okay. Do I need to repeat anything? Okay. Okay. Well, because we are a plant organization and a wild plant organization, I'd just like to take a few minutes to find out, has anybody seen any good wild plants recently that they'd like to share? Yes. Fetid adder's tongue. It's that time of year. And where did you see it? By the hatchery in Blue Lake. Great. Yeah, somebody was asking me, where's my fetid adder's tongue? And I couldn't tell them why hers wasn't up, but I know somewhere. Patty. Oh, on the Redwood Creek Trail, where we're going for a field trip the last Saturday of this month, Patty says that the Kurabayashi trillium, that's the one called the giant purple wake robin, that it's blooming already. So hopefully there'll still be plenty blooming the last weekend of this month. Okay, yes. Okay, out at Lanphier, the Humboldt wallflower is starting to bloom. You probably have plenty of time to get out there and see it. Okay, one more, yeah. Red flowering currant, yeah, in the forest, and I bet a lot of people here have it in their gardens too. Yeah. Okay, Gary's starting to talk about what's blooming in his yard. He's got Oregon red blooming for the first time. Thank you. Okay, keep moving. Okay, announcements. The first announcement I want to make is to thank somebody who's hard to thank, but Chris Beresford is the person who stepped up to run our plant sales and ran them for, has run them for 11 years. And every year of that, she was trying to be just a nursery manager and not a plant sale person. But we think at this point, she has finally retired from being the plant sale manager. She's shaking her head. Well, we have a good team to take her place. It takes more than one person to replace Chris, but so we have a token for Chris here, a certificate that reads, in recognition of 11 years coordinating chapter plant sales, providing a fun, beautiful, and meaningful venue for interaction among plant people while raising astonishing amounts of money for the chapter. We present this certificate of okay, just gonna.
No. Picture, Carol.
Oh, I see. Oh. Sorry. But it would be nice if we stood after that, we can stand up.
You guys
So just
me.
Just wave. Okay. Great. Hey, and in the way of announcements, does somebody from our plant sale committee want to say anything? There is a plant sale coming up and a wildflower show coming up the first weekend of May, and you don't want to miss it. It's going to be a busy weekend because the botanical garden is having their plant sale too. But we have more native plants than they do. You're good. Okay. So the first weekend of May, and for the wildflower show, you can sign up to help it. We need all kinds of help, from collecting flowers, just sticking them in vases, welcoming people at the show, all kinds of things. And it's all a big fun party where only people who like plants come there. It's nice people. And the plant sale is the same thing. It's like a party too. Okay. Now I'm going to put on a different hat and introduce our speaker, which I'm very pleased to do. I met Adam a number of years ago, and I don't remember quite why, but I was meeting him at the Fickle Hill Road entrance to the Arcata Community Forest. He had volunteered to lead a plant walk. And we're always looking for people to lead plant walks. See me if you want to. But Adam had volunteered, but I didn't know him yet. So we had to meet and so that I could see him and I could talk to him about what the plant walk should include. And I was going to show him the route that I had found in the community forest that made a nice plant walk of the right length and had a good variety. Okay, so there we were in the parking lot, and Adam got out of his big van that looked like he probably lived in it some of the time, and he was wearing his colorful woven shirt that was sort of hippie looking, and he had his dreads, and he had this big sparkle in his eye, and he was excited about plants. So we had a great walk, and he led some great plant walks, and it's just been really fun knowing Adam since then. Now I got to see him again when he worked at the wildlife refuge at the Lanphier unit, and he gave them some good bang for their bucks, covering a lot of territory, mapping invasive plants out there. And along the way, to let you know that he keeps his eyes open and he thinks about what he's seeing, he spotted the very first small, let's see, Chimaphila menzizi, the little prince's pine, which is a mountain plant, but here it was in the Lanphier dunes. So he saw it and he knew this was unusual, and he followed up on that, and he published a little article in Darling Tony about that. Right? What? And Madronia, yeah. Ours was just a practice run. Okay. Now the reason Adam was good at trumping around in the forest and off the beaten path. He sort of warmed up by doing the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Coast Trail in the course of his years before getting here. And he was looking for invasive plants and the woolly adelgid when we did that. So he's had plenty of practice keeping his eyes open. And he's continued doing that since he got his job with the Wiyot Tribe, with the headquarters down there on Table Bluff. You know, Table Bluff is a place that a lot of botanists have gone for a long time. And okay, I'm sure people saw that there was hazelnut there, but Adam saw that hazelnut and he said, now, where have you seen hazelnut around here other than, you know, on the coast? And he determined that the hazelnut coastal scrub was a really new kind of vegetation type, and it probably had, its presence there probably had to do with people, the native people. So he has paid attention to the hazelnut and to the things we call Indian potatoes or geophytes. That's all the little edible native bulbs. And to native grasslands. So he's paid attention to all those. And after starting out as a botanist in the Natural Resources Department there at the Wiyot Tribe, he's now the Director of Natural Resources.
Carol, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you stand in front of the, yeah, thank you. Hi.
Okay, hi,
I
sorry.
should have said something earlier. I'm so sorry.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah, sounds great.
Okay. Sorry, folks out there. Okay, so let's hear from Adam Canter, the Director of the Natural Resources Department of the Wiyot Tribe, and sometimes botanist.
Thank you, Carol. That was an awesome introduction. I don't think I think I had forgotten about that day in Arcata Community Forest, but thanks for reminding me. Oh goodness. Well, so much to say. Thank you for that awesome land acknowledgement. You know, land acknowledgements, you know, tribal folks say have started to become cliche, and the worst thing you can do is ask a tribe for them to help you with your land acknowledgement. It really needs to come from kind of the settler-colonial perspective, and I will say I'm a settler colonialist, I guess, colonist from the Appalachian region, but I've had the privilege and honor to get to work for the Wiyot Tribe for almost a decade now, and I just am so thankful and blessed for the knowledge you know, that the tribe has been able to share with me. And you know, when I started doing talks about ethnobotany, I look back on them and think about how naive I was, and just, you know, now think about how kind of sacred the information, you know, is about native plant, culturally important plant, you know, populations and sites. And I was just kind of woken up to the point by a fellow native friend, Marlena Dusek, if you know her. She runs the Food Sovereignty Lab, or is one of the folks at Cal Poly Humboldt. Says she hates the word ethnobotany, and it's like such a Western term. And so maybe we could call this culturally important plants of the Wiyot, or culturally important plant relationships of the Wiyot. And so that's definitely a Westernized term. And now, you know, finally, I feel like we're at such an important time, and tribes are finally getting, you know, the recognition that they deserve as being, you know, master permaculturalists and ecologists, and holding you know, generations of knowledge, you know, that can't be gained in a, you know, 2-year master's project or PhD, but that really take generations to learn. And when you think about these sites like this photo here of Table Bluff, looking towards South Wigi, you know, in a lot of ways are just like other archaeological resources, cathedrals, village sites, and really, I think are just as precious as finding a projectile point on the ground is when you get into these diverse tended landscapes and horticultural stewardship areas. You can really feel the love that's gone into these sites. This is the area. There's some cool coastal prairie kind of going into scrub, and then across the slope there, I remember running into this old timer white guy, and he's like, up there. He's like, you mean that hazelnut chaparral? And I'd never heard the word hazelnut and chaparral together, but it kind of made me think about that. This is the most words you'll see in any slide. I don't know why I put this here, but it's just kind of talking about, the Western kind of study of ethnobiology and ethnobotany, kind of moving from just cataloging lists of species and their uses to now, moving more into the, realm of traditional ecological knowledge and landscape, landscape restoration and ecocultural restoration, and kind of thinking about, like I said earlier, how these are kind of westernized terms for long-term relationships with the landscape. And I was talking about being naive about these presentations in my past. Now a lot of the the things I'll talk about today, or try not to talk about today, are really sacred information, information about uses of plants that could be proprietary. And now more than ever, we're seeing academia, nonprofits, government agencies reaching out to tribes, to ask for management help, traditional ecological knowledge, to basically help fix all the screw ups that we've made, over since the Industrial Revolution. And so, really thinking about, I love this group, because I think what we can do here today is talk about, as botanists, how we can identify, culturally important plant populations, and then, work to protect them. And, in restoration, up until recently, tribes were never consulted about restoration projects. It was kind of done behind this closed door, thinking, this ivory tower. And finally, these tribes are starting to be asked, well, what species, would you like to see planted here? What do you think used to be here in the past? Even, ethnographic information, most of everything I'm going to share today, hopefully a lot of it can be found in published literature. You start to get into the realm of unpublished information, and it becomes, really, sacred and proprietary to the tribe. But even like the ancestral territories, just like states, boundaries, we try to put solid lines and hard lines on the maps, and really these areas were fluid and transitory, and so this ancestral territory on this map, sorry, it's a little bit blurry, and we need to add actually Muratawak, but kind of illustrating that, unlike some of a lot of tribes, the Wiyot Tribe really only have access, direct access to less than 1% of their ancestral territory, about 500 square miles from, the Little River south to the Bear River. But in this map, this is from Loud's ethnography from 1918. He visited the area in 1915. Really doesn't align with what tribal knowledge says about the ancestral territory boundaries, being much further to the east to Chalk Mountain and all the way to Berry Summit. And so today, we're trying to represent that as accurately as we can. Yeah. So this is the northern boundary of the Yurok and the Wiya't at Little River, what we call it today. I would try to pronounce this Wiyot's name, but it's pretty long. A really important spot and kind of botanical hotspot. There's some invasive issues there, but there's a lot going on. And then south to Wiya't or Bear River Ridge, and looking at the tribes as kind of the stewards since time immemorial. Today we see the tribes being leaders in environmental stewardship. And if it wasn't for the Wiyot Tribe, this area most likely would have been developed with an industrial wind project. Super diverse. During the botanical surveys of Bear River Ridge, over 84 different natural communities were identified along the ridge and the border of the ridge. About over 50% of those being sensitive natural communities that we really don't see many places. Representing one of the longest contiguous coastal prairies in California. And so right now, a lot of people have heard about the 30 by 30 effort to conserve 30% of the state's lands and waters by 2030. I think that presents hopefully an opportunity for Indigenous land return. Looking at our sensitive natural communities, rare species, early successional communities, a lot of these are directly tied to Indigenous management through the use of fire to restart the successional clock. And you can go up here. It's amazing right now in the snow. The communities up there sledding and just having a good time, ignoring the no trespassing signs. Which a lot of work with land return for the Wiya't is for several generations now, basket weavers and plant people have had to trespass to be able to get access, and so a lot of just the pain in having the access to cultural activities kind of blocked off by Western rules is really painful. And so we're trying to get more land back. There's the tribal council on Wiya't. This is a really amazing prairie. It's kind of full of siskiyou checker bloom and tons of geophytes, like Fritillaria finis, Indian rice fruit, which is a really important edible bulb for many tribes, and was tended all along the West Coast. You're just kind of coming up, in the prairie with camas and calochortus and other geophytes. Why did I put this on here? Well, just to kind of show, how small the North Coast Floristic Province is, how narrow, and how the Wiya't are totally within that province, and also how we're kind of close to other provinces and a lot of indigenous landscapes you'll find along the borders of ecological communities and in different provinces. This is one of our first pictures of a Wiyot citizen, Mad River Annie at Mad River Baduwa't Beach from around 1905. And you think about the amount of knowledge that this picture represents. There's a whole pile of hazel sticks and spruce root, probably maybe some bear grass. Those planks in the back are covered with surf fish that are drying. The Wiya't were masters at surf fishing. And what is the one species that we don't see in this photo? Beach grass, Ammophila. All right, what do we see? Too worried to tell. Abronia, I heard it. All right, good crowd. Yeah, and maybe is that Oh my goodness. What's her name? The sage lady. Artemisia. Yeah, maybe Artemisia. And looking north at the same cabin, this is right when Mad River Beach actually used to come out where the parking lot is today, and you can see the kind of terrace bluffs and the giant conifers in the background. Redwood was a keystone of Wiyot culture, and the dugout canoe, a major form of transportation. Areas where redwood washed up, close to village sites and to accessible areas were really important. It was said that you could look across the Eel River bottoms and see just hundreds of fires from every family. Apparently was always working on their next dugout canoe and burning it out. It's a constant kind of effort and artisanal skill. The Wiya't are still a thriving culture. This is a Wiyot Day, which is a really awesome celebration of Wiyot culture that happens third week in August. You can see the awesome dentalium necklaces that were a form of currency in the basket caps. Redwood Plank House, which has the double pitched roof, really advancement in architecture, and the round door that's symbolic and also to help keep predators out. It's kind of looking at Sakiewicz or Bear River Ridge from out towards the mouth of the Eel, which Wiya't means Eel River in the Siletluk language, said to mean abundance. And one thing that I think probably most folks know here is kind of busting this myth of Native Americans being these wandering hunters and gatherers. Where here for Wiyot culture, we saw the establishment of permanent villages and relative or resource abundance, which really led to the beginning of gardening and horticultural stewardship, of bringing plants to where you wanted them to grow, and tending plants, fertilizing them with fish guts. And the Wiyot are pretty special in that they're an Algonquin language group. There's still a lot that we don't know about early North American peoples. Today, the Kelp Highway hypothesis holds just as much maybe truth as the land bridge. And local tribes have stories of other people visiting from across the ocean. We think about when sea levels used to be further out, access to Asia would have been closer. And we've recently found out more information about Beringia, but it's thought that the Wiyot and Yurok stock might have separated from a larger Algonquin migration that happened around the Columbia Plateau. And so this map, I think, is pretty awesome. It shows how unique the Algonquin language stock kind of is towards the majority of Algonquin speaking peoples in North America. Thought to be one of the earlier peoples to get to Humboldt Bay, that as we got closer to contact in 1850, had become more kind of boxed in by the Athabascan folks. I'll try not to talk about early explorers too much, but I think this is a pretty cool quote from one of the deckhands or first mates on Vizcaino's expedition from 1603. I mean, what is that, 420 years ago? I didn't plan that. And so it's thought that Vizcaino discovered the mouth of the Eel River. And in doing so, he was approached by Indians that invited him to come up the river, giving him fish game, hazelnuts specifically, chestnuts. What do you think chestnuts were? Bay nuts? Do we have a member of the chestnut family? Buckeyes, are they in the chestnut family? Chinkapin. Chinkapin. Who knows? But I mean, pretty telling that there were systems where these nuts were stored and used as trade items over 400 years ago. And we think about the Wiya't and we think about the importance of coastal prairie. We have to think about the redwood curtain and how bleak and dark and terse of life the redwood forest is. It really helped keep the Wiya't protected, but also was kind of a constant force that really promoted the need for vegetation management by the indigenous people on the coast here, as forests are constantly trying to encroach on our prairies here out at Table Bluff. One of our sensitive rare vegetation types is the Pacific reedgrass, or Calamagrostis nucensis, prairie type, really a keystone of coastal prairie that's become quite rare. Bunch grasses are really awesome carbon sequesters. They hold most of their carbon underground. And are really a more resilient vegetation type under climate change, which is a rare natural community. This is up at Big Lagoon, a little bit outside Wiya't territory, but you could kind of be in a lot of places here on the coast where you see this monotypic spruce forest, kind of even aged, that's really taken over what used to be the big lagoon prairie with the Mianthemum. Of course, we love Mianthemum. And out to Table Bluff, where we have Monterey pine actually starting to encroach. Monterey pine was used a lot as a erosion control by Caltrans and just ornamental tree. And a lot of the gulches at Table Bluff, which now are kind of covered in spruce, you can go back and look at the old aerial photography and really see how much grassland used to be out at Table Bluff even 50 years ago. This is kind of over by the botanical gardens in CR. I love this picture. This is Leanne Moore. This is probably the lady I learned the most about Wiyot Ethnobotany, Wiyot cultural plants, in a say ancient but really old huckleberry patch out at Table Bluff. And I tell people I plant huckleberry just out in the open, and they're like, it's an understory plant. And you see, I'm just like, well, I don't know. And so we have really cool examples of these Vaccinium ovatum scrublands on headlands and out at Table Bluff. You can see some Douglas iris, a really important fiber. But huckleberries and most berries were burned about every 3 years on average. And so that big huckleberry might be starting to get decadent. I'm sorry, it's a little bit blurry, but Leanne Moore owns Oceanside Jams, if you've ever seen her around. She makes huckleberry, red huckleberry, salmonberry, slough, California blackberry. Is that it? It might be.
Thimbleberry.
Thimbleberry. Actually, that's the most important one. Apparently, yeah, thimbleberry preserves can only be found like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or something random like that, other than Wiya't. And we think about kinnicknick. We don't really think of it as a coastal prairie plant, but here it is, out at Table Bluff, kind of being dominant in this grassland. You can see the big huckleberries in the background, but I haven't really seen this many places. Really important plant to many tribes. Medicinal plant that's used worldwide. Circumtemporal plant. Used all around the world for kidney and renal cleansing. And then the berries. There's the classic urn-shaped flower of the Ericaceae. Berries were also eaten. And maybe this is the other slide with lots of words, but I put this in here. This is a quote out of the Wiyot Loud ethnography. Loud was actually friends in the early 1900s. And came up to Humboldt on a visit, was also friends with Joseph Tracy, Tracy and Jepson. But, talks about today there's more wooded area in Humboldt County than white men came half century since. And so this is in 1915. These prairies were of incalculable value to the Indians, not alone for their vegetable products, but for the game upon them. Sharp contrast could be drawn between the animal life of the forest and on these prairies and the accounts of the exploration party previously mentioned. I think they're talking about the L.K. Wood expedition. And they kind of talk about, going through the dense forest and coming out and seeing, deer and grizzly bears and whatnot. So Wiyot Ethnobotany, the Wiyot are also a dunes people. And had many villages and cultural sites out on the dunes, including at Malel Dunes. And as Carol mentioned earlier, we're fond lovers of Indian potatoes, edible bulbs like Brodea terrestris here, growing with some kinnicknick out of the Malel village site. This was really cool work day. Actually, you can see Chairman Hernandez in the background. I don't think I remembered that. Taking some Wiyot youth out to clear vegetation, woody vegetation that has been encroaching in on the village in recent time. Brodeas are really awesome members of Vimnaceae, with staminodes, which are these false stamens, those white structures. They're fake stamens. Don't believe them. And they have ornamentation a lot of times on their points that you can use to diagnose a species. And what's really special about the Malel village is we have a handful of geophytes, many of which are not associated with dune habitats, more associated with oak woodlands and valley grasslands, like Diclostemma, which I think its name changed. What is its name changed to? Dipterostamen. They're always changing those names. Blue dicks. I always forget. Are blue dicks and Ucal the same thing? No, they're not. Congestum and capitatum. But the coolest one on here is definitely the fritillary, the white bulb in the upper right, which is starting to kind of pinch off its little bulblets, asexual reproduction, which you can kind of see why it was called Indian rice root, kind of like little orzo. It's a lot of texture. And so the Wiyot are really just reconnecting with this part of their culture. For many years, this myth of the hunter-gatherer, indigenous folks to our area was just propagated. And you read some of the early descriptions and they say tobacco was the only species that was cultivated. That's complete BS. And what's kind of happening out there, you know, we haven't done a lot of research out there. It's still kind of an open book. But in the absence of fire and kind of management, duff is getting really, really thick out there. And so we kind of wonder, you know, how deep can the bulbs go? This is just a random picture of allotropa, which is not common out in the dunes. You can find it at Moelle. West Coast Headlands, another great spot to kind of see fleeting coastal prairie. It's kind of rapidly getting encroached. Allium unifolium, one of our, I think our only native coastal allium, used to be found out at Moelle Village, but it hasn't been seen in about 15 years. So it's thought that it might have blinked out there. But all these species, the tribe is working to, you know, propagate. We have bulb banks and bulb beds of these species that we hope to be able to use for outplanting at other sites. There's the Fritillaria finis that we were looking at earlier, Indian rice root, which seems so delicate to be in such a intense, windy location. And you don't think you could get out of here without me talking about hazelnut scrub. I promise I won't talk about it for too long. But yeah, this is an amazing rare natural community that up until it was kind of rediscovered on Table Bluff, was thought to be more restricted to the Central Coast. And one of the things that I hope to get across to this group is, you know, people love grasslands, people love forest, people don't like scrub. And they see it and it becomes a blur, but it's very, you know, ecologically important. It's almost more rare because it's mid-successional and it's not really viewed to have value, you know, in agriculture, in forestry. So I say, before you cut the scrub down, take a closer look. Hazelnut scrub is usually found in concave depressions that have, you know, higher moisture holding capacity, less direct sun. And this is what the hazelnut looks like right now. It's actually, if you have a good eye, it's kind of easy to identify because the catkins are out and they're getting long. So the long catkins there. And then pretty soon we'll see the female flower. Really, you can see it there. Sorry, it's blurry, but one of the smallest shrub flowers I know. And a lot of people say they never see hazelnuts. Well, it's when the hazelnuts get really lanky, they kind of quit producing nuts, and they really like to be burned or pruned. And one of the coolest things I remember learning about hazelnuts from George Buckley, renowned Wiyot elder, is that when they would harvest hazelnuts, they were constantly snapping branches as they were harvesting the plants, pruning them as they go. And you can see these pretty complex crown architectures. This is the picture of the Michaels, Michael Kaufman and Michael Vasey, looking at some Calamagrostis dwarf hazel and ruderal Scotch broom and Monterey pine, a little bit of spruce, but you can barely even tell. But at their feet, it's actually all dwarf hazel kind of crowded around out at Table Bluff. And, you know, is it dwarf because of the winds? We've also found dwarf hazelnut scrub around Point Arena in Mendocino County. Hazelnut bluff scrub. And we know through some of the ethnographies and just through tribal knowledge that hazelnut was burned very frequently. This is a cool paper by Harold Driver where he looks at kind of cultural activities. And it's hard to see, but in that top row are the different tribes. So we have, the Karuk, the Yurok, and the Wiyot. And the pluses are if that activity was known to be practiced. And so there we have hazelnut bushes burned for better basketry work. This is cited a lot by Kat Anderson, renowned California ethnobotanist, in her book Tending the Wild. We also have confirmation of the regular use of fire in berry communities. But yeah, you don't think of hazelnut when you really think of, right on the beach or right on the ocean. This is out near Hickshari or Elk River. We have a hazelnut kind of right above the slough. One big concern of the tribe is the loss of gathering sites and cultural areas due to sea level rise. And so the tribe is really focusing on land return and acquiring more upland habitats. Like here at the Azalea Reserve, which is an awesome area to see some of these really important cultural plants like hazelnut and Ceanothus versiflorus, slope plant, and of course the benefit of all that the azalea. And this is an example of kind of pure hazelnut scrub up on kind of near Tompkins Hill. And Antianima ludicum, black stem fern, really critical to the art of basketry, which really was, across the entire world is considered to be the most advanced here on the North Coast. And, looking more mosaic, coastal bramble there in the foreground. Another one of our rare coastal natural communities can be dominated by thimbleberry, salmonberry, California blackberry, and there's different series. Salmonberry is super important to the Wiya't. It's almost like their mascot. I feel like they love it, and I love it too. All members of Rubus, so rose family. Similarity there. Thimbleberry and pure thimbleberry scrub. It does exist. It's a series underneath, and of course I already talked about Vaccinium obatum and salal. I can't believe how many people I go up and I'll pick a salal berry and they're like, I'm gonna die. And I'm like, they're the best. A lot of people don't know salal berries are edible. They are, and they're very prized. There we're looking at the poor people that have to wait in line for 15 minutes to go to Ferndale. And some Calamagrostis kind of scrub. Keep an eye out for the bunch grasses. There's really not a lot of native bunchgrass prairie left. And then we get to these really diverse areas. I heard someone mention osoberry at the fish hatchery, which is kind of right on that cusp of the fog belt where you're getting more inland interior influence. This is out at oh my gosh, Worthington Gulch. Oh my goodness. Yes, Hydesville with Worthington Gulch. A really awesome property that I went on a CMPS field trip to that seemed like it had all these coastal and all these interior species kind of mixed together. Like formerly, oh my gosh, it's now in Mianthemum, and it's a very widely dispersed plant. False Solomon seal, used medicinally. And then out by Ferndale. And so when I first started working for the tribe, one of the cool projects that I got to work on was we received this Bureau of Indian Affairs geospatial program grant to map culturally important species around Wiyot territory, which a lot is private land. And so we were just kind of driving around on roads, looking for cool stuff. This is former Wiyot Natural Resource Director Eddie Koch and Yurok tribal member. And we're out somewhere near Ferndale. And you can see above the road there, it's just this giant hazelnut and a little patch of hazelnut scrub. So we were kind of mapping stuff like this, trespassing on properties that I won't mention, and seeing cool stuff like Sidalcia, Malviflora patula, sort of near Alton Bluffs. And Alton was a really special place for the Wiyot, kind of on the border of their territory, where they used to gamble, and they told stories about the bluff being put there to block the northern wind. And even a rarer Sidalcia, Sidalcia oregana exemia, one of the few kind of confirmed genetic populations of this is right across from Table Bluff Reservation. And the tribe has actually adopted this right of way. For years, the county roads folks were mowing this right when it started to flower. And so we ended up taking it over, and now, you know, we mow it before and after it's kind of started to do its thing. And yeah, one of the showcases here, Lilium occidental, the Western lily, federally endangered lily, one of the few pure red lilies. That's range is only found between Table Bluff and just north of Coos Bay, Oregon, within a few miles of the coast. Growing in some really amazing kind of ecotone between spruce forests and prairie at the Table Bluff Ecological Reserve. Right now, the tribe is collaborating with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife on a coastal prairie restoration project in this area, where we hope to restore some of the native grassland and also take out some of the spruce to open up the lily habitat, which you know, historically was managed by the Wiya't, but then was managed by grazing. When the cows were pulled off, the lily population really started to tank about 10 years ago. And now the CDFW has reinstilled its grazing program. We also looked at restoring a population at the Table Bluff Reservation on the border of a depressional wetland there. And what we found is we put out some moisture sensors, and David Emperor, who's kind of Mr. Lily, they call him, if Dave's here. He really has has studied the Western lily so much that he knows the appropriate soil moisture regime that it requires. And what we found is there was a very small band right on the edge of the wetland that kind of had suitable soil moisture requirements for the Western lily, whereas the population on Table Bluff is more of a flat, non-concave, hard pan scenario. So it's thought that the reason you find the Western lily where it is that it's one of the few places that wasn't the soil wasn't tilled, and so the thin hard pan, which basically acts as the water table, wasn't broken up, and then drained the moisture availability. So we weren't successful in restoring it at the Table Bluff Reservation, but we did restore some of its habitat and have kind of created some Calamagrostis grasslands. Some rare coastal prairie species, Gentiana affinis, not one that you find much. Do people see this one often? Elkhead. That's the only place I've heard people say that they see it. And then Scepter's gentian, which is seen here growing with Western lily, which has gone to fruit. You can see the pods, the capsules, they're starting to release. And one of the few camas populations on the coast that's still remaining, a well-known culturally important species that was cultivated by tribes all across the West, as well as Labrador tea, formerly ledum, Rhododendron columbianum. Used to be a lot more ubiquitous around Humboldt Bay, but now there's only a few populations. And I was talking to Claudia earlier. The veg camp crew actually just found Rhododendron columbianum out in some wetlands by the dunes, which had never been identified by any Western botanists, to my knowledge, up until this point. So I think that's just kind of a cool story to think about how much is still out there that, we haven't found and we don't know about. Physocarpus, 9-bark, a shrub that doesn't get as much attention as it deserves. And then, of course, our black cottonwood, North Coast black cottonwood forest, going back to the Holland vegetation types, the old school folks here. North Coast black cottonwood forest received one of the rarest rankings in the state. And today there's efforts to restore this habitat in the lower Eel and Mad Rivers, really important species. And Helenium, sneezeweed, really important edible green, native coastal prairie plant, as well as California poppy. There's Artemisia again and iris together, sisters for life. Really important medicinal species used widely. Well, mugwort, Artemisia douglassiana. They're both Douglas. Why does this guy Douglas get so much attention? Somewhere. And I apologize. I should have more Wiyot names. Right now, the tribe has really made huge strides in getting Wiyot language back into the public and renaming place names. Oh, here we go. Akimawash, which you make designs with. And for years, one of the biggest ethnobotanical questions on in our areas, where is the closest bear grass to the coast? We know it, you can find it in the King Range, but it's long been kind of a question for the tribe that basket weavers have really wanted to learn more about. This was actually on a really cool field trip with Green Diamond, a botany crew a few years back, kind of looking at what they thought were some of the more coastal bear grass areas, kind of around like Christmas Prairie and Snow Camp. One of the things I wanted to highlight tonight, really exciting, is the recent return of Murashawak, a really amazing coastal property to the tribe, the first forest land to be returned to the tribe, and really the first time that the state of California has helped kind of return land to a tribe in kind of as a means of climate resilience. This is a really amazing property. I was actually talking to someone earlier that just talking to the tribe and also folks in the community around King Salmon, Humboldt Hill, the generations of kids have kind of grown up playing in this forest that really somehow resisted development over time. And as I was talking about, I showed that picture of the ethnobotanical roadside mapping that we were doing. Back in 2015, as part of that effort, we actually identified kind of this area as significant and also being kind of adjacent to a cultural area of Murashawak. And when we found out it was on real estate market, working with the Cal Poly Humboldt Sea Level Rise Institute that we're a part of, and kind of help share grant proposals and opportunities. Saw this new environmental justice solicitation from the Ocean Protection Council, and we had a couple of ideas for the proposal. Looking at contaminated sites, kind of more sea level rise mapping. But then we're like, well, what about a land return project? And everyone on the board really liked it, and so we started to pursue it. This area was identified both through ethnobotanical mapping, but those kind of purple tan polygons that's a sea level rise inundation polygon. Looking at, that's only 0.5 meters of sea level rise. So by 2060, we're going to start to see a lot of changes here around the Wigi or Humboldt Bay. And, for generations, the tribe has been building up their sites like on the bay through, their shell mounds and constantly adapting to sea level rise and climate change. And today have really, are showing themselves as being leaders, in this kind of arena of climate adaptation. But what's really awesome about this property is it has both lowlands and wetlands. So we'll really be an area where we can actually research sea level rise around Humboldt Bay, but also allow habitats to migrate inland with sea level rise. It's just an old chart. And if you really want to learn more about kind of vegetation, first go talk to the tribes and then go look at historic aerial images. This is one of the Schuster collection, where you can kind of see some of the area from around the late 40s. And so we know that the gulches were forested. We can kind of see some of the wetlands. Crazy to see the size of the ships that were coming in. And the early development of Humboldt Hill. We do know that there was a remnant grassland on the property where we've actually found Arctostaphylos columbianum, which is used in sacred ceremonial fire by many tribes in our area. And when I first started working for the tribe, they talked about being gifted manzanita from the Karuk tribe because the Wiya't could no longer find it within their own ancestral territory. And so there's actually hazelnut Arctostaphylos scrub, which seems like a weird oxymoron, as I think of hazel as being more wet. And I don't have a picture of the Arctostaphylos, I'm sorry, but we hope to restore some of that area. And the tribe acquired this not a moment too soon. This is some adjacent development that actually happened after the tribe had started to go into real estate negotiations. And if you remember when the tribe was given back to a lot, there were some really mean folks in the community. In particular, a guy named Rob Arkley, that said that, what are you doing giving land back to the tribes? You're taking it away from the people. The tribes are the people. And so, as the tribe was going through this process, really trying to be secretive about the real estate deal, because, at any time someone that, could come in and offer a higher price and take it away. But this is something that we're looking at that as part of the Ocean Protection Council grant. We're working with Cal Poly Humboldt Baykeeper, Pacific Watershed Associates to develop an ecocultural restoration management plan for the property, and really want to help to quantify the impacts of this clearing. We actually found Labrador tea right upslope of this too, which might be one of the historic Joseph Tracy herbarium voucher specimens from the early 1900s. Unfortunately, a lot of the spruce forests, this is one of the southernmost spruce forests. Sitka spruce starts to kind of peter out. You get to Bear River Ridge, and then there's a few isolated populations in Mendocino that are really small groves. Was logged in 2014, most of which went to the pallet industry, which is just horrible. That was still happening even 10 years ago. And of course, following the harvest plan, what do you get? You get Scotch broom and Lonix Landry. He's a really good friend and colleague of ours at Cal Poly Humboldt. That's really helping a lot as we start to think about the restoration of this property. But it's really amazing, 48 acres. There's patches of scrub. Here we've got some maybe Rubus ursinus, Mara oregana, Frango persiana scrub. And some of my colleagues, Zach Erickson and Marissa McGrew here, some really nice salmonberry behind them in this. We're not sure if it's a Nissan Pathfinder, Zuzu Rodeo, but right now the property is kind of closed to the public, but we have an exciting opportunity coming up. This is looking at a really nice part of the property over at one of the cuts, and we got Elder Cheryl Seidner. This is the day of the return ceremony with Helena Wilkinson, a Wiya't citizen that has just a wealth of knowledge for her years, and Dr. Laurie Richmond from Cal Poly Humboldt, who was really instrumental in the collaboration to help create the proposal to return this property. And if weather permits, and it's going to permit, this Saturday we're having a restoration day, which is an awesome opportunity to actually get out and see this property, and also remove some English ivy from the really huge Sitka spruce trees that are out there. So come on out. I think there's going to be coffee. We're Watershed Stewards Program is hosting this. Charlotte is really great. She's put a lot of work. She's a graphic designer. As you can tell, this flyer is really cool. So yeah, come on out, RSVP. She needs at least 30 people to get there for her WSP requirements. Man, this has been like a fritillary. I've had pictures of fritillary. It's coming out soon. And we got Elder Melva Ducklow, who we lost this past year by her hazelnut in her backyard. She's been tended for a while. Was a really great lady to know. I think I lost track of time, but that might be my last slide. So, thank you. Oh, sure. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions.
So when the tribe is burning huckleberries, are the huckleberries they're burning or?
Burning everything.
Well, I just wonder, do they just scorch them or are they burning the hazelnut right down to the ground?
That's a good question. Low intensity burns, but both. Low intensity burn can kind of act like a prune. That's something that I didn't talk about the Wiya't massacre because the tribe is really kind of moving beyond the massacre. But the Wiya't are really rediscovering a lot of their cultural practices as we speak, and leaning on neighboring tribes to kind of gain specifics about that. Oh, sorry.
Well, the Yurok up at Sumac, they would burn they would take the hazelnut branch and burn them to use them for binding for the structures.
Yes. Yes, hazelnut was like a super fiber. And so it was used for fish weirs, traps, eel traps, burden baskets, basket frames, and what's it called? Not a basket weaver, weft. Yeah, and it's also a food plant, so it's like a super plant. And so what you'll see a lot of times in some of the hazelnut scrub patches is you'll see an older stem that has, you know, a canopy that's nut producing, and then around it you'll see small resprouts that were used for basketry, which apparently, you know, you really have to harvest early before any, you know, remnant of side shoots start to kind of propagate. It's a very fine art, and if you want to learn more about, you know, that Frank Lake has published a couple papers, hazelnut management, recently, more focused on the Karuk tribes practices.
So in addition to the calabrosis and Pensia, what would you consider, what are more bunch grasses for the coastal prairie?
Dischampsia. Oh, question was, what other bunch grasses would you consider for coastal prairie? And I said Dischampsia. Festuca rubra. There's what others? Festuca or Bromus Californica. Anybody else? Yeah, that's a good one. It's a pretty one too. Purple needlegrass, stipa. Sorry. What? Yeah, a good one. I'm not an agrostologist, so disclaimer.
Species, are those gonna be direct patches of those species? Or just patches of the culture?
Just patches.
Just patches of it.
And so we do use GIS with cultural resource layers to kind of, you know, help further kind of confirm by indirect kind of evidence that areas are historic, and you know, tribal knowledge, like some of the photos of Leanne and but yeah, kind of just looking. Thanks.